Lead, follow, or get out of the way might be the best leadership advice ever. You're watching TechStrong Gang. Hey everyone, it's Alan Shimo. Happy Thursday to you. It's great to have you on here for another TechStrong Gang. Well, I am still out in John Swartz's West Coast side of the world at JFrog Swamp Up. Though by the time you see this, hopefully I'll be on my way home. But lots going on out here at Swamp Up, lots going on in Boston at the Splunk Conf. Lots going on all over the place, and we've got it all for you here on TechStrong Gang. We have also got a great group of folks to talk about it with you. Let me introduce you to them. First of all, it's good to see his face here on the show with me. Is my friend Rob Reeves, R2.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. John Swartz, Garima Bajpai, who are regular, and a new regular here from our Tech Field Day brethren, our friend Tom Hollingsworth. Hey, Tom. And of course, joining us, it looks like, are you home or still up in Boston, Mike?
I'm still in Boston. So you got to say that right.
Yeah, you're still in Boston. Mike Vizard. All righty. Guys, let's jump into things. Mike,
all right.
We're going to talk a little bit about leadership. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a story written by Alan over on Digital CXO that we think we should all check out, but it's based on a survey that finds that only 1 in 10 companies thinks that its workers are ready and have the skills to drive the next generation of innovations. And Alan points out, well, that's not the workers' fault. It's an actual leadership issue because the leaders of these companies are not stepping up to kind of drive this point home with their workers or making those investments. Tom, I know that leadership training is a bit of a hobby of yours, but what's your take on what's going on here? Because it suggests at least that a certain amount of malaise has been allowed to set in.
I think it absolutely has. And I love that Alan brought this up to the people out there because workers are going to work, right? Like you give them a task and they do it and then they do the next thing and then they do the next thing. But if they don't know what the next thing is supposed to be because they didn't get clear communications, because they don't understand the value of what they're doing, then they get apathetic about it, right? Like we see this all the time. And I want people to understand that this is not a tech problem. This is not because of AI. This is a problem everywhere. I promise you, you have worked for a bad manager sometime in your life. Not Alan, not Stephen Foskett, not Daniel Newman. They're all wonderful managers. But I mean, in general, in your career, you've worked for a bad person. And you can probably figure out that it's probably not because they don't understand how to configure RAG to reduce hallucinations in the thing. You're probably going, the guy probably thinks that a RAG is something he uses to polish his BMW. What Alan calls in this article soft skills, which I think are a little less soft, are the important things, right? Adaptability. Say it with me, folks. Change happens. We need to get used to this idea that what we know now is not going to be what we're doing later. Communication, clear, effective communication, and not just putting things on blast, right? How many times have we gotten that email, the all hands email, and I don't even know who's seen it, right? Well, did you see the email last week that we were supposed to do this thing? Well, you never sent it to me. It must have showed up in my spam folder. Communication is a two-way street. There's a message, a sender, and a receiver. And all of that gets wrapped up in this idea that you have to understand how your team works. If you've ever seen Remember the Titans, you've seen how they build that team together. All three of those things that I just told you are part of a program that I volunteer to be a part of called Wood Badge, which is a part of the Boy Scouts of America. I've spent the last 7 years deeply immersed in this program, watching the curriculum change over the course of that time to incorporate all of these things, to train our adult volunteers to be the leaders for the youth that will be the bosses of you when you're about to retire. And I can tell you that I have a deep passion for this because I've seen it transform people from average leaders into effective, great people, but it focuses on the soft skills. It doesn't matter where you're trying to configure AI. It doesn't matter whether you're trying to lead a corporate takeover. it's the values, it's the communications, it's the agility and the flexibility and the team leadership skills that matter most of all. Because most people that I've taught have told me over the years, I use Wood Badge every day.
Yep. So Tom, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I think there are absolutely, you want to call them soft, hard, because if you have soft, obviously you must have hard. But there are soft and hard leadership skills, and I think many of us on this panel have led teams, led companies, and have had a chance to develop some of these leadership skills. One of the other things that I've learned, and I've co-founded more than several companies, is, and I learned this lesson as a young boy. I'll tell you the truth. My dad owned a deli in New Jersey, and I went to work for him one summer. I was probably 14 or 15. I was a cocky teenager, and he told me to go clean the bathroom. And I said, "Clean the bathroom? I'm the owner's son. I'm not supposed to clean the bathroom." He said, "No, when you have a company, it's your business, you've got to be able to do every single job there, right? If something's too good for you, it's too good for your worker too, right? Don't ever hear anyone. Don't let anyone ever hear you say that, right? That it's too good for you, and I'm not equating learning AI to cleaning the bathroom, but if we're going to ask our folks to embrace AI and go all in on AI, we owe it to them and ourselves and our organizations to have a little bit of knowledge here, to have a little bit of dirt under our fingernails too when it comes to AI, so that we know what the challenge is, we understand what their issues are, and we empathize, right? Empathy is so important. It's one of the founding principles of DevOps, as you know, Garima, right? Empathy.
Yeah, and that is why we say that ignorance is bliss, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would add to what you have said, Alan, because, the first aspect is, of course, knowledge, right? You need to kind of know that throwing money on this problem will not solve this problem. So build your OKRs in a way that it makes sense for people. So invest 20% of your R&D time in experimental projects, for example. This should be and could be an OKR to build that skill, that build that momentum and cultural mindset shift which needs to take place, right? And then there are three parts of this problem. The first part is, what is my new skill radar as an individual in an AI era? Right? So how do we, I as an individual, I onboard to that, be it a leader, be it a engineering manager or a practitioner, everybody has to do that, right? And that change is coming. The second part or the aspect of the problem is, how do we work in a team where AI is a team player? So when you bring AI agents, when you bring AI components, co-pilots into the team equation, how the team should react, what kind of assets, what kind of support you need for their teams. Do that due diligence now. And the third aspect is, enterprise level. All these enterprises who are used to big bang transformation programs, I'm sorry to say that this needs to stop, because most of these transformations will be AI-led micro changes in the future. So you need to get used to it, you need to experiment with it, and also curate the culture as you go along.
There was it was interesting when I saw this story. I wanted to ask a couple of the executives out here at Swamp Up about it. And I talked to this guy, Fred Simon, who's the chief data scientist and co-founder of JFrog. And we were laughing about it. And Mike, I think it's appealed to you too, is this whole idea of the edict from the top down to change and to change fast. And we were thinking about back in Silicon Valley days where we would have these movements among the employees from the bottom up to adopt things like the Macintosh or whatever new technology. And there was a resistance among management. So there would be these small these small teams of people trying to advocate. And now we have like the opposite. and maybe it's a consequence of AI in a certain sense in this example because of productivity and efficiency demands. But now things are now we have the executives who are the big change agents versus the employees who used to have to push them as much as possible. Now, and it's very interesting. And yet there's no upskilling, and there's very, very rare skilling that's going on to make this happen now as fast as the executives want it to happen.
Well, John, I think it's funny that you mentioned that because there's this breakdown between a manager and a leader, right? Managers make sure that you're doing things right. Leaders do the right thing. And I think that a lot of times, if that's the same person, then great, you have a really effective management leadership chain. But like you said, in a lot of cases, the leadership comes from groups of people that are kind of below the management level saying, hey, if we could only do it this way, things would be better. And I think that's where a lot of, call it what you will, right? Like adopting Macintoshes, shadow IT in the cloud, AI revolution. A lot of it came from below first because you have to prove it to people who are very traditional in the way that they approach things. Oh, this isn't on my list, so we shouldn't be doing it. But as soon as it becomes something that has impactful opportunity for the company, now it becomes a directive. Now we have to do this. Meanwhile, all the leaders, if you want to call them that, are sitting around going, we already knew this. What took you so long?
Yeah, and it's really vexing for the employees, especially think about the people at the entry level trying to get into some of these companies. They're having a hard time in some cases, and they might be the people who are the best at early adopters or users of AI. And the irony is the people who are entrenched may be slower at doing it. They will do it. So we have these conflicting emotions in kind of edicts going on within companies. So this creates all sorts of paralysis.
But let me hold on before we.
Let's get Robert in here for a second. As I listen to everybody, it reminds me of the fact that companies get into ruts, and everybody's so busy trying to do the thing that they normally do every day, aka putting out fires, that they don't have time to think about fire prevention. So, how do you kind of make it acceptable to take a minute to step back and rethink and re-engineer something to make it more efficient and innovate?
Well, like Tom was saying, there's, a sender, receiver, and a message. What is that message that resonates with that receiver? For management, it's going to be saving money. For people that are individual contributors, it's going to be about, being more valuable to the company. You got to speak in terms that the receiver is going to respond to positively. And you have to put it into their mental schema, not yours. So empathy, like Alan was talking about. But, look, it is, this whole conversation reminds me of that line from The Simpsons with Ned Flanders' parents, where they said, we've tried nothing. And it's we're all out of ideas. And so, there's a lot of, do as I say, not as I do. We have managers that are not seeking to automate and eliminate their jobs. Look, as a DevOps engineer, I always believed that my job was to automate myself out of a job. Never happened. But I took that upon myself to make certain that my developers and my SREs were very happy. Those, both pitching and catching software code. And I just don't see that. I see a lot of people, the individual contributors, are being told to adopt AI. Yes, they're not being given the resources to be successful, but there's not a clear exit criteria. And managers are being managers. They're not being leaders. And instead of saying, this is where we're going to, this is where we want to see productivity improvement, they're saying, oh, I'll know it when I see it, which is really, really difficult for people to operate under. So it will fail. It absolutely will fail. And the people that adopted AI bottoms up, they will be successful.
I don't disagree, Robert. So look, we could have a conversation up here about leadership, and that's an important conversation to have. And there's important leadership traits that can be trained, can be learned. And then there are people who are born leaders. But I want to bring the conversation or close out the conversation on this where we started, which was around the AI piece of it. One of the things that came out, John and I are out here at Swamp Up, was there was a Gartner study, evidently, that 40% of CIOs are increasing, or at least asking to increase their budgets because they're being pressured from their board to adopt AI. So now, who's the leader here, right? The guy you think, or the person you think is the leader, is really just taking marching orders from the board. And, it reminds me of this meme that's become very popular that we've seen on LinkedIn and other places, right? It's about 6 panels. There's the leader saying, "I want my AI." And the group says, "When?" "I want it now." "Why?" And the guy says, "I don't know." Right? And there's some of that going on here where, hey, the board's saying we got to adopt AI. I need budget to do AI, and I'm going to go do AI. At the same time, the message from JFrog on the keynote stage from their CEO, Shlomi Ben Haim, was very clear. Hey, he asked people, who's using AI right now in your SDLC? Who's planning on using AI right now in your SDLC? Okay, whoever hasn't raised their hand, you should probably leave the room.
Ah.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said. If you don't, you can leave the room now. Right. It was laughter, but it was nervous laughter.
Yeah, because that, again, is what our leaders are being told how they need to lead, or what they have to do to lead. Tom, it goes back to what you said. Someone sends out a letter. That's a terrible way. Sending out an email saying, we're going to do AI. No matter how well that AI wrote that letter for them or whatever, right? That's not leadership. That's not leadership. You got to get dirt under your fingernails. You got to be shoulder to shoulder with your troops, with your players.
Well, but Alan, we've never seen the board tell us to adopt, technology before. I mean, do that thing because they read it in a in-flight magazine. Mm-hmm. Like we never saw this with cloud or DevOps or.
No, it's always
server.
Them up.
Wait. To be fair, we have never seen CIOs turn around and say, "Oh, I need more money to do that, and let me attach everything in the world to my quote unquote AI initiative, including that laptop, firewalls, and everything else."
Yeah. We've never done this with digital transformation or anything. Never.
Well, look, we just changed the names to protect the innocent.
Exactly.
But anyway, hey, we've given this one its 15 minutes of fame. Let's take a break here on the gang and come back. And we're going to, I think John and I will maybe give an update from all the other things we've learned at Swamp Up. You're watching TechStrong Gang.
Discover TechStrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with TechStrong Group.
Hey folks, we're back, and as Alan said, we're going to talk a little bit about Swamp Up, but both John and Alan were there, but we're going to start with John because, well, Alan's been to this show, I don't know, every time it's existed since, the beginning of time. John, I think this was your first trip, and I don't think you spend a whole lot of time with those folks, so, give us your general impressions.
Yeah, that's interesting you said that because I'm coming to this show, and this is a DevOps show, and I'm wondering, okay, they're going to talk about AI, is it going to be a Me Too announcements, or what are they going to do? They're going to have an AI agent announcement. They did, of course. But one of my big takeaway from Shlomi's keynote, and I think it really resonated with me, and I think it resonates with their partners, which include NVIDIA and ServiceNow, is there's this new persona in software development, AI agents rather than human developers. It's making it imperative that foundational platforms incorporate agentic practices alongside security, traceability, and viability to succeed in this era. And I think Alan mentioned this Gartner survey, which was the AI FOMO survey. And that was the first statistic that he cited before he went into kind of a long list of announcements. I'll mention just a couple of them because I thought they were interesting, and I actually think they're very relevant given what's going on with agentic AI and just this tidal wave of announcements. And some of the executives at JFrog refer to it as liquid software, where there's no set version and you're constantly adapting, trying to figure out what the hell is going on. So JFrog, just to reiterate, and Mike wrote the story, actually, in all fairness. They announced a couple of things. They announced Fly, which is a DevOps platform that simplifies AI agent integration for app developers working at scale. They also announced App Trust platform, which serves as like a unified hub for governance, risk management, and compliance. And to me, and I got the same impression from Atlassian's show months ago. This is like a practical solution that almost kind of applies to a number of companies and especially enterprises that are grappling with this, again, I will say a tidal wave of AI agent announcements coming at them, which can be confusing, overwhelming, and at the same time, they're being pressured, the CIOs particularly being pressured from the top down, from the board level down, to move as fast as possible, not break anything. So that was kind of my takeaway. I mean, I'll pass it on to Alan because I know he wrote a ton of stories from this show.
Yeah. So John, let me riff off that a little bit. And Mike and Shane, you're right. I've been coming to Swamp Up for many years, both here in Israel and all over. And full disclosure, Shlomi and Fred and Yov, the three co-founders, are personal friends of mine that I talk to pretty often. Couple of things. JFrog Fly. This is JFrog made its bones in this business, if you will, right? With Artifactory. Artifactory was the repo, and still is, the repo for artifacts, right? And artifacts are a valuable tool in the developer's toolbox. And if you're using artifacts, chances are you're using Artifactory to house, catalog, access your artifacts, right? Like there's JavaScript repos, there's Java repos, there's Docker repos, there's Artifact repo, Artifactory. They took that little kernel of a business, and more power to them, and they built the whole JFrog platform around it, right, Rob? You were here with me in the beginning in this stuff on DevOps, Robert. This is old hat to you. They built an entire business around Artifactory. First, they started checking the artifacts for security with X-Ray. Then they started building more repos for different things. Fly is the latest repo. It's a repo for AI agents. So think about it. Now I can store my agents up there, and I need an agent for a particular task. I just bring it down from my repo, right? So I could reuse these agents over and over again.
Much like reusing artifacts that another team has built, using a web service from another team. It's almost like turning AI into software components. Amazing.
Robert, that's exactly. They just played the same script. Number one. Number two, the big thing that JFrog has been on for the last 4 years, maybe more, is security. They bought a lot of security expertise, a couple, like 3 different security companies to build security into the software supply chain. And you know what? Lo and behold, agentic AI needs security too, right? So they build this whole security piece around agentic AI. And be clear, they definitely distinguish between agentic AI and generative AI. But for agentic AI, they're calling it DevGovOps because there's this whole use of shadow AI. Like there was shadow cloud, there was shadow IT, people whipping out credit cards and buying instances. And I wrote an article, it's just out this morning on DevOps.com, about do we need another DevXXX ops, right? My friends in the purest of the DevOps people, right? Patrick Dubois, John Willis, Damon Edwards, they hated when I used DevSecOps. The DevOps people revolted. We don't need no stinking syllable in the middle of DevOps. There is
Well,
just
Alan, they're really upset that they didn't come up with it.
Yeah, who moved my
It was that. But you know what? Over time, DevSecOps became a thing, and then we saw all the takes on this: Dev Biz Ops, Dev Sales Ops, Dev this Ops, Dev. Everybody wanted to be in the middle of the Dev and the Ops. So the latest one is Dev GovOps, and when I heard it, I said, "Oh God, here we go again." But here's the thing: we do need governance on AI. Back to our leadership discussion. Tom, our leaders are telling us, go forth in AI. And it's okay to make some mistakes. It's okay to experiment because we're in this deep learning phase. Go forth in AI. Well, that's great until the alarms go off and the stuff hits the fan. So we need some sort of governance around our use of all of this AI. And JFrog tagged the line Dev Gov Ops. Is it a great name? Will it have legs and stick? I don't know. But the idea is good, right? The thought is I think, a good thought. We need to have governance around this. The other thing they came out with is that, on our tables, John, right, they had a little magazine. I said, how quaint. Actually,
Yes.
printed on paper. And it was the AI catalog. I felt like I was going into Sears again or something, And so I opened up this catalog, and they have all the different, 6 or 7 top LLMs. They had Bob AI and all the different. But what they're really doing is they're cataloging or allowing you to catalog all the AI in use in your organization. What AI you're using, what models it's based on, who's using it, what prompts have been put in. And again, back to Dev, Gov, Ops. It's all part of that. So I think that's a brilliant piece of it, to tell you the truth, because, sooner or later, the thought police are coming in.
Sorry to interrupt. So here it is.
Oh, I'm done. There it is. The AI.
I saw it on the table, and my first impression was
so some marketing person. Yeah, some marketing person right now is having a good laugh, going in. I made you look.
Anyway, tricked him.
It's okay. There were no 10 more appliances in there, but what the heck?
Yeah.
Why not?
I want to get Garima's thoughts in here, though, on this particular issue, because I can't quite figure out where I stand on this one. Do we need a new DevOps platform for inserting AI agents into these workflows, or can we just start bolting AI agents onto our existing platforms and it'll all work out just fine?
I think we need to step back a little bit and understand why do we need this kind of platform, right? And of course, the platform will not solve all the problems because before standardization, the platform can do only a little, right? But there are two main problems when I see, integration of AI into like DevOps or developer workflow or even operation workflow. The first part is, can I bring my data? And when I train my model, who has the IPR on that model, right? So I need to have a fragmented approach to these platforms so that I can train my model in-house, but I can also infer the models online or real time. So that's the first issue. And I have to read a bit on, how this platform caters to that problem because, again, who owns the data, how this data is kind of, curated and used. Even if you are, deploying it in premise, the model itself gets like the training of the model, who owns the IPR for that. So the first problem, I think I have to look into that. The second thing is that a lot of these things which we are talking about from an AI agent perspective, this will be democratized, which means that you will have to have a marketplace of AI agents which can be hosted somewhere. So if JFrog is bringing this Dev GovOps, I would like to understand a little bit more on, if I can bring my AI agent into that platform, will there support, like, does this support a marketplace of AI agents, just like, cloud providers? And
My
I think,
understanding is yes, Garima.
yeah, so that is great because that solves one problem, right? The first problem still is something which needs to be discussed, because if JFrog is using their cloud services, for example, it brings some kind of vendor lock-in. But I think I have not read enough about this platform, so they might have roadmap items which may make this platform interoperable as well.
Garima said something though here that I want to come back to, Mike, to your point, which is this isn't a new platform. And that's the genius of what JFrog's done here. They took Artifactory and they built a platform around it. And all they've been doing since then, and I don't mean it belittling, that's all they've been doing, is they've continued to build out this platform. The acorn of Artifactory grew into this mighty oak tree. And this latest thing with Fly and DevGovOps and agentic AI cataloging and stuff, it's just more on that same platform. It's not a new platform. It's the JFrog platform. And they're not alone. GitLab has done the same thing. When you look at the players in the DevOps, DevSecOps space, there's JFrog, there's GitLab, there's Harness, there's CloudBees, some others, Circle CI maybe, if there were others. It's changed over the years. But they've all, in their quest to become platforms, keep adding on functionality as it comes to market. AI is the latest and greatest of it. But it's that same platform. It's the GitLab platform. It's the JFrog platform. Everybody wants to be a platform. It's my
Robert,
take.
do we have too many platforms already?
Well, I mean, no, yes, maybe. I mean, what's too many? I look, this whole conversation's, well, look, my job on the Tech Strong Gang is to remind people of, that we've solved these problems in the 90s. And so here we go again. So this whole conversation reminds me of Zawinski's Law. JWZ. Y'all remember Jamie Zawinski? All right, for our, people keeping score at home. Longtime Netscape engineer, and came up with Zawinski's Law, which is every program attempts to expand until it can read email. Those programs which cannot so expand are replaced by ones which can. Well, we've just replaced email with, first it was cloud. Now it's AI. And so we're going to continue to see this. And there are certainly, applications here that don't need email. Like, why do I need to read email from my refrigerator? Why does that make sense? But there certainly is going to be applications here for AI, and the ones that do it right will succeed, and those that do it wrong, looking at those leaders that just tell their people to do it, go do that AI thing, I'll know it when I see it, are going to fail. I am betting on JFrog figuring this out, that there are companies that are struggling with their AI catalog, with how do they keep track, how do they maintain governance, regulatory compliance, all the GRC stuff. How are they doing that with AI? And the trick with JFrog is that, customer, you already have Artifactory. Let's help you out with this other thing. And I like how they are sticking to their core things that they do well. So is there too many platforms? Probably. But there's a lot of long tail there. And I see JFrog as definitely a leader in this space. And I think they're going to be successful with this, even if it's just keeping track of tokens and who's using it.
Absolutely. And just one other thing, John touched on it, I want to reemphasize it, is though they want to own the platform, they're not going it alone. They've had over a year now of their relationship with NVIDIA, and you want to talk about a platform. NVIDIA has the AI platform, right? Yes, they make the GPUs, and that's a pretty sweet business. But the real key to their power is the ecosystem that they've built around AI and CUDA and all these things. So JFrog is very closely aligned and in partnership with NVIDIA, with ServiceNow. And, ServiceNow is just a powerhouse of a company and everything they get involved in. And Sonar, I interviewed the CEO of Sonar there yesterday, Tariq. They're building a real ecosystem around this platform and around DevOps in the age of AI is the best way I could say it. So I'm going to make that the last word on this one. I'll take my founder's prerogative and say, okay, we're closing this one out. We're going to come back and we're going to hear from Mike about his trip up to Boston. It wasn't to see the Red Sox.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hey folks, we're back, and as Alan alluded to, yes, I'm a Yankee fan in enemy territory, but they're being kind and gentle, so it's all good. And plus, I lived here for 10 years and went to BU, so I think they allow me to come back and visit from time to time. However, it's been an interesting couple of days here because normally this is a Splunk show, right? And it's supposed to be mainly about what goes on with that IT analytics platform from back in the day, but they've expanded that out into the realm of security, and they're also driving into observability in the DevOps world. And there's also a big AI push around agents and agents everywhere in the Cisco portfolio. So they have now agents for observability, and there'll be agents to drive security, and they'll use agents everywhere they can. But underneath all that is a backstory that's getting kind of interesting, because I think Cisco's playing for nothing short of world IT domination here. And what they're really talking about is the unification of things like IT ops, security ops, networking ops, any kind of ops, AI ops for that matter. And they all want it to be managed in some shape, manner, or form with a Cisco tool or platform. Now, Tom, Cisco's not the cheapest player in the marketplace, but you could make a case if you have a single vendor that it winds up being a little less expensive than cobbling together 10 different vendors to accomplish some particular goal. So I don't know, in the age of AI, is there an opportunity to unify all this stuff, and does Cisco have a shot at it?
There is an opportunity, and I do think that Cisco stands one of the better chances just because they are so pervasive in the industry, right? Like we joke all the time that if you're watching the TechStrong gang, the packet passed over a Cisco device somewhere along the way, right? They still kind of are the 800-pound gorilla of the networking space. You know how we always used to say that nobody ever got fired for buying IBM? Well, in the networking world, it's Cisco. And part of that reason is because they have made themselves so indispensable to what goes on. However, when Chambers left and Chuck Robbins took over, Robbins saw the handwriting on the wall and realized that pushing boxes wasn't going to be the solution to their problems. They needed to become a software company. And that's what he's been doing slowly over the course of the last several years. It's not the easiest going because that aircraft carrier doesn't turn on a dime. However, I think that this is kind of the setup for the end game, right? AI gives them an opportunity to be transformational, and being able to purchase these platforms like Splunk that give them visibility into the rest of the network to be able to put these agents in place to make operations a lot easier for those teams. And you're probably sitting there typing out a comment you're going to leave on this video about how I'm wrong. Then why did HPE buy Juniper? Because I promise you it wasn't for wireless access points. They wanted access to Marvist. They wanted access to the AI stuff that Bob Friday's been doing over there to integrate with Aruba Central to do the same thing at HPE. This is the setup, right? Everybody wants to make operations easier because operations is like the person who answers phone calls at the front desk. They're the executive assistant that tells the people where to go. If you can make operations life easier, you have won the game. I mean, look at Meraki. That was Meraki's entire business model, right? Who cares about the hardware? Let's make operations simple and easy to do. And Meraki has taken over Cisco networking. I think that this is their opportunity to essentially Merakify AI agents and to put them out there and to make them run everywhere, to collect that data, to analyze that data, to give it back to people and say, isn't it so much easier to run your network? Why would you ever want to go with anybody else? Because we're the one-stop shop. We're all you need.
I have some thoughts there. So, Tom, I don't disagree with you. This ain't your grandpa Cisco. It's not about that router or the switch or even the firewall. Because, for a long time, Cisco was very quietly the biggest security vendor in the world, right? People didn't realize it. But Checkpoint and Palo and all those people, great. But Cisco sold more security than any of them. However, this is a different game. And what I said before about NVIDIA's real strength is not just the GPUs, but the ecosystem, and they've open sourced stuff and the partnerships and that groundwork they're laying. That's the game. That's the game. And Cisco knows it too, and they're trying to play the same game. And let me tell you who else is playing this game. Small companies like Salesforce is playing this game. Right? What do you think Agentforce is all about? Right? Microsoft, Google. The only one of the hyperscalers that maybe isn't is Apple at this point, but I expect them to shortly. So make no mistake, what's going on here is a fight for the soul of IT. What's the platform that's going to control all these agents, that's going to control the way we operate and do business and work? And it's not the Johnny-come-latelys who maybe raised a couple of $100 million on a couple of $1 billion or tens of billions of dollars of market cap. It's the guys who have the T's next to their names, right? Who have $1 trillion market caps. Because that's the ante, that's the table stakes to play in this game, right?
Has anybody noticed that whenever somebody says, I don't mean to disagree with you, they go ahead and disagree with you anyway?
Yeah, well, I'm polite, right?
No, never noticed it. Never. First time.
I agree with what Tom's saying. I'm just saying, yeah, you're going to have HPE, you're going to have Cisco, but it's not the traditional network guys even that we've got because this game, this prize isn't about who controls the network per se. It's about who controls the whole ecosystem.
Right. I think this is great.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I will lean towards Tom first, and then I'll come to Alan, because Alan, you have changed the conversation a little bit here. But for the immediate parts, I think what Tom was mentioning, it's spot on. What we see in NetOps or SecOps is that it's very human intensified jobs because it's very complex in nature, right? And that the sweet spot, what Cisco is, piggybacking upon, is that they have the data fabric, right? They have they have the telemetry part of the network and the SecOps, right? And then they have with Splunk, they have this observability lens. So combining these three things, the data fabric, the telemetry, plus the observability, they would release a lot of pressure, operational pressure, which is basically, I mean, all these network operation people ask them, like, 80% of the cost is intensifying in labor intensive jobs, right? So that is where immediate gains would be. And again, I do not disagree with what Alan you have said, because this is a long shot, probably it's an ecosystem play and all that. But I think to echo what Tom has said, I think the immediate sweet spot is that.
Robert, do you think that this can happen, to Garima's point? And I'll just bring up, there's an old joke that says, what's the one thing an application developer and an IT admin can agree on? Well, it's the network guy's fault. And there's all these silos in IT, and it has been since time began, and people buy stuff and they make individual decisions. And unless there's some CIO sitting at the top of this thing who's, declaring an edict saying thou shalt, I don't know if you can actually bring IT together. The silos are too solidified and too hard, or you think it can be done?
No, it can't. If it could be done, it would have been done. This goes back to soft skills. This really does. How do we get people to change when at first look, prima facie, it might not be in their best interests? So how do you convince people to do that? And look, it is, it's great that all these people with, $1 trillion market caps are investing money. But, the real winners here are like folks like CoreWeave, people selling shovels and dungarees during the gold rush, not the people actually getting gold out of the ground. And so, look, I think it's a little premature to say who the winners and losers are going to be. But right now, it's our friends that are selling shovels and dungarees, GPUs, and cloud GPUs. They're doing very well. Everybody else, we do not know how this is going to play out. We have no idea.
John, you're out in the Valley. What's the culture in Cisco like these days?
I think of Cisco as two different companies, right? The era that when we were out, when you were probably out here, when you lived out here, we had the John Chambers of the JC movement. And it was almost like a cult movement. I remember he embedded me once with him to go to Comdex to talk about their big consumer play. I remember how that went. And then we got the pragmatic, practical, very kind of low key Robbins, who's kind of reinvigorated or kind of given them more of a purpose. Cisco has always been kind of referred to as kind of one of the boring kind of pioneers. They're kind of lumped in with HP and Oracle in a certain sense, but I think there's more relevance to them now, as Tom and you all have pointed out. So they have kind of a rejuvenated image. And the one other thing that always stuck with them for years and which really hurt them was every time they announced their earnings, they would announce layoffs. So this was a company synonymous with layoff and retrenching year after year after year after they bought companies. So they buy companies, they shed workers, they bought companies. It was almost like this snake with a never-ending losing its skin. I think it's a different company now. I think it's a more vibrant, vital, kind of respected company than it was a few years ago.
I know Cisco gets beat up by people because every time they acquire something, there's a price hike for that product right behind it. So, Funny thing, everybody gives Broadcom grief about that, but Cisco actually invented that playbook. So we'll see how that all comes together. Sure. But Alan, final thoughts for today.
Look, I think Cisco has done a good job of assimilating Splunk, right? Not to sound all Borgish, but they've done a good job of assimilating Splunk. And I think Splunk is an engine, to Tom's point about Cisco's move to software, right? To really be a dominant software player. But make no mistake, their competition's not just HPE. Their competition is NVIDIA. Their competition it's a big boys game. And there's something to be, look, I don't want to burst anyone's bubble. But as much as we talk about startups, and some of us have made good money on founding startups and having exits and liquidity events and all of that liquid-based kind of stuff. No, not talking about you, Rob, don't worry. But that being said, it's still a big boys game because most of those startups, most of those liquidity events happen because the Ciscos and the IBMs and the Microsofts of the world put the money in and buy those startups. Most liquidity events are not IPOs. That's a very small percentage. Most of them are M&A. And the way our industry works is medium fish buy small fish and big fish eat medium fish. Cisco's a big fish, but they're going to be swimming with a lot of sharks in this one. and it's going to be interesting to see who comes out on top. That's it for me, Mike.
All right, folks. Hey, everybody, thanks for being on the show and sharing your insights. And Alan, sign us off.
All right. Hey, as usual, we've got a full TechStrong TV lineup following. Tom, if I'm not mistaken, we have Tech Field Day today, don't we?
We do. AI Infrastructure Field Day is going on right now, actually. Alistair Cook is really cooking out there with some great companies. Check out techfieldday.com for the lineup.
It'll be on TechStrong TV. If you don't catch it live on there, of course, you can catch it on the Tech Field Day YouTube channel, and they're available on the TechStrong TV OTT app. So if you want to sit at home and watch it on your TV, it's cool there too. Hey guys, I'm not going to be on tomorrow's show. I'll be traveling. But Mike, you'll steer the ship. It's just a 3-hour tour. What could go wrong? But until then, everyone, enjoy TechStrong TV. Enjoy the rest of your day. On behalf of the TechStrong gang, we're out.